G.I. Joe Retaliation has better designs than the first film, but it's actually kind of worse, with it being even more so just a meaningless action film. So much like the first film, I'll tell you how I rewrite it. This is G.I. Joe Retaliation, Another Take. Let's add a part 2 to the title. The film begins right away with a recap of the first film, talking about the Nana War and how ordinary soldiers, Duke and Stalker, ended up helping the Special Operation Force of G.I. Joe stop Cobra. Unfortunately, their commander is still at large. And now you know, and knowing's half the battle. The film begins 2 days later, and we meet Stalker leaving Ottawa jail from the last film. He's calling Duke, and Duke says they got some people to pick him up from Joe. How do I know who they are? And Duke is like, oh, you'll see when they arrive. And up drives an American flag Hummer, blaring Paper Cut by Linkin Park. He meets Joe's Mutt, Quick Kick, Gun Ho, Rock and Roll, and Heavy Metal. Stalker jokes, wow, so stealthy. Now where the hell do I sit? Rock and Roll says that, oh, sorry man, we just brought everyone who was in the area. And the driver, Heavy Metal, says, you're gonna have to sit in the back with Mutt's little lady. Everyone's giggling, but Quick Kick doesn't really get the joke at first. Mutt's like, watch out, she's a real lover. And they open the back and out jumps a Rottweiler that jumps onto Stalker, licking his face. Then we cut back to the rest of the Joes who are still celebrating their victory from the last film by grenade bobbing like apples. The rest of Team Joe made it to their new hideout. And yeah, they're still on the underwater base that they took over from Cobra. On top of the base, we see patrolling on the ice is Snake Eyes and 2 characters, Windchill and Iceberg, and they come across a wolf who's in a bear trap. The only dialogue in this scene is Iceberg just telling Snake Eyes to leave the wolf and walking away, but Snake Eyes actually frees the timber wolf despite it growling at him. He walks away and the wolf starts to kind of follow after. Meanwhile, Hummer Squad, they're jamming to music way too loud, and Quick Kick is telling stories to Mutt, who's actually asleep. It sounds like he's describing a weird action movie, but is in reality describing what happened in the first Transformers film, which happened in real life in this universe. And Stalker is sitting in the back with a dog licking his face, and he's just questioning how the hell are these people a secret organization? Back with the other Joes, Flint starts interrogating Dr. Mindbender, trying to get him to say what is Cobra's plans and where's the commander. He actually agrees to tell him, and he hits a thing on his monocle which projects holograms. And he explains, as Flint knows, G.I. Joe was founded by the US government to safeguard the world, but when Joe started to become more and more of an international group and started doing things against the US's interest, the US fought back.
Hydra was founded on the belief that humanity could not be trusted with its own freedom.
Cobra was founded by the FBI to do what Joe was originally meant to do, by safeguarding the world for American interest. In reality, they were founded in the early 70s, but it wouldn't be for another decade before the Joes discovered them. The Joes discovered their dealings with Iran and the Contras, and this began the first Cobra War.
The war taught us much. Humanity needed to surrender its freedom willingly.
Around this time, Dr. Mindbender was experimenting with nanites, and a new Cobra commander took power. He decided to fight the world a little more strategically rather than openly by creating the company Extensive Enterprises to fund terror.
Hydra has been secretly feeding crisis. And when history did not cooperate, history was changed.
And eventually, Cobra decided he wanted even more. So thanks to funding loyalist candidates and nanites being able to disguise people, Cobra has slowly been able to take over the government of the US, for the most part.
Hydra created a world so chaotic that humanity is finally ready to sacrifice its freedom to gain its security.
One of the Joes is on his laptop and he's like, guys, you gotta see this. And he shows a news report by internet journalist Hector Ramirez, based on a character from the old G.I. Joe cartoon who single-handedly combines G.I. Joe, Transformers, and even Inhumanoids and even Gemini holograms into one universe. And Hector's talking about, apparently last night the Pakistani president was assassinated, and some organization no one's heard of until today called G.I. Joe did it, and someone in charge or whatever of them left a message online.
This is Sergeant Duke Hauser, G.I. Joe. We're tired of serving our country. It's time the country started serving us.
Everyone's like, oh, no way. Duke is like, that's not me. And Lady J, well, he sure as hell looks like you. Cobra's framing us. If that wasn't shocking, and the president appointing a woman to be his new vice president, he just addressed the nation. Cutting to a clip of not John McCain exposing G.I. Joe to the world and blaming Snake Eyes for being the one who assassinated the Pakistani president, as well as the Joes who caused the recent attack in Paris. So he's reorganized Homeland Security under the organization of Cobra, formerly known as Extensive Enterprises.
To navigate this demanding warp speed world, we can all use a helping hand. But how do you know who to trust? One company cares for every man, woman, and child on our planet. Cobra Industries. Cobra connects you. Modernizing defense Cobra shields you. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
Using their supersonic Nighthawk jet, they're able to stop a nanite missile from causing a similar case in Toronto. Then cuts back to Hector and he jokes, and then the leader of this Cobra thing, I guess the new Secretary of Homeland Security, walks up like a chrome-faced Darth Vader. The commander at the podium says that the citizens of the world should not be afraid. Cobra will stop at absolutely nothing to make sure that this rogue militia of G.I. Joes will be stopped. We've located their main base off the coast of Greenland. And Duke is like, wait a minute, this was all just a trap to get us stuck down here. Then back with Flint and Mindbender. Flint asks why is Mindbender telling him all this. And he says, just to give you something to think of before you die. And he shoves him away to Storm Shadow's cell, and he just bashes the back of his head into the cell till he grabs the keys from him and he unlocks everyone. Firefly and Storm Shadow kick Flint when he's down, and we can see Firefly has a hideous burn on his face from the end of the last film. As we see Cobra Commander activate the base's self-destruct, it blows up a little at a time. He also sends some red ninjas to rescue the others. Iceberg and Snake Eyes deal with them. A bunch of random Joes try to stop the jailbreak, but Storm Shadow cuts them down. They make it to a Dyson sphere and they try to escape. But Flint, crawling on the ground, shoots the tank, which causes a big explosion, which Storm Shadow, still topless from the last film, takes the full blast of, and he's getting really bad burns on his back. The two catch him, but then Mindbender just drops in and says leave him behind, he's too much of a liability. He tells Storm Shadow he's out of the band. As the two leave in the Dyson sphere and start shooting missiles up into the base, not helping that Cobra is making the base self-destruct, so Storm Shadow has to find another way out. As Flint's crawling on the ground, trying to call for help. Meanwhile, the ninjas, the Joes are fighting well, but one of them manages to take Iceberg. Eventually, Storm Shadow makes it topside, and he starts fighting Snake Eyes. He almost succeeds choking him out until Timber returns and knocks Storm Shadow off of Snake Eyes. His burned skin touching the snow really gets to him, and then a random ninja comes up and gasses him. She introduces herself as Jinx and helps Snake Eyes up. Meanwhile, the others are trying to escape the water base. Lady J finds Flint all damaged and is all concerned for him. While Bill finds the jumbo jet and starts taking off, and Flint and Lady J have a action movie, wait for us! As the plane slowly takes off, as the ice below them cracks and the base sinks to the bottom of the ocean. But luckily, Flint and Lady J make it onto the plane and they escape. Doc and Wild Bill are pilots. So now there really only is a handful of Joes, and most of them aren't accounted for. Everyone's concerned and screaming. And Flint's like, guys, I have something to tell everyone. As we cut back to Snake Eyes and Jinx, who bag Storm Shadow. Zipline chase scene from the original, now on the coastal mountains of Greenland. Back with Hummer Squad, they made it into America, and they go to get some gas. They stop off at a gas station, and Heavy Metal's inside. The rest of the squad is listening to the radio, and it goes on to a news report telling them what's going on with Cobra. Stalker's like, we gotta get out of here, just as the gas station explodes, knocking them over. With Heavy Metal still inside, and a bunch of Cobra guys show up, led by Major Blood. They start shooting at the Hummer, and Rock and Roll is really concerned as best friend just died. But Stalker reminds them they're under attack, so they flip over to Hummer and get out of there. He just hotwires the car and they drive off, and this leads to an epic chase scene set to Closer by 9 Inch Nails, but a radio censored version because PG-13, and because they were listening to it on a radio. There's chasing, and they try shooting back, and a bunch of cops show up, and Major Blood just uses the cop cars to try and toss them at the Hummer, which only kind of works. So he shoots at the cop copter, which crashes right in front of the Hummer, which slows it down a little. So Major Blood's car and the Hummer are right next to each other, and Blood shoots into the window. Everyone tries ducking, and Quick Hick jokes, "It's just like Mad Max." And Blood's like, "Oh, you bloody Yanks in your movies, just nonstop." And Quick Hick's like, "I'm Canadian." And Stalker's like, "I'm the real American here." He takes a grenade and tosses it into Blood's car. Blood panics and he swerves off the road. He tries tossing it back, but it blows up in his hand as he tosses it, leading the Hummer squad escaping. Back with the jet, they fly over the burning remains of Svalbard, and Snowjob is really distraught about this, crying that his home's gone, and Duke says all of our homes are gone. Roadblock adding that, yeah, Cobra will pay for this. But Scarlet notes that, okay, now where are we gonna go? We're running out of bases. We cut back to Stalker, and he says the same thing, and split screens between the two groups, and rock and roll, and Flint says, "We're going back to the Sarge." And Flint asks for medical help, so Doc tags in with Snowjob for the new pilot. Meanwhile, Cobra, they all arrive at a secure location. Commander welcomes Firefly and Mindbender back, and Mindbender says that Storm Shadow went down with the base, saving them. Destro says, "No matter, are all the rest of the satellites ready?" Zemon's like, "Yes, all 6 of them are ready and operational." Tomax is like, "And we even went under budget with them." "Great work, Tomac. Right back at you, Zamont." Destro breaks up the twin shenanigans and say that Operation Zeus is ahead. Cobra says, "Excellent." Meanwhile, the ninjas, we just have the same scene with Storm Shadow from the original, where they confront him for killing their master when he was a kid. He ran away, which drove him into the hands of Cobra. But here it makes more sense because Cobra's been around longer. It turns out he wasn't actually the one who did it. It was Zartan in disguise. Many others defected to Cobra and formed Red Ninjas. Storm Shadow says he'll take out Zartan to get his honor back. With the rest of the Joes, one 14-hour flight and a jumbo jet later, they make it to the Sarge's house. The door's open, but no one's home apparently. They just welcome themselves in, but then they get jumped by the Sarge. And Bruce Willis is playing Sergeant Slaughter. He's dismissive at first, and he can't trust any of them because Cobra's taken over the government. And Lady J says, "That's why we're here, we need your help." He's still dismissive and says that's exactly what the other guys say. And Hummer Squad's in the basement, all chained up. Breaker says that they're part of G.I. Joe, and Sergeant Slaughter is like, "That's what anyone would say." Everyone shows them their patch and introduces themselves with their real names and their code names. And Sarge actually recognizes Lady J and Doc's his parents from the old war. And he trusts them for now. He lets Hummer Squad go, and there's a big reunion between Duke and Stalker. Breaker, Lady J, and Scarlet showed that the subtle differences in the demeanor and speech of the president shows that Cobra's even got to him. And Sarge is like, "Aw, man, I voted for him. I could have sworn that new guy running against him was going to be the spy." Doc's like, "Wait, what?" But we move past it. He's concerned that Cobra's back, and Flint asks him how much of Cobra does he really know. He says he knows the basics. Last time he knew anything. And he talks about how back in the Bosnut War, and Stalker says, "Don't you mean Bosnia?" He's like, "Yeah, whatever." He personally fought the Cobra commander at the time. He unmasked him even. He tried escaping, but he retired him permanently. Stalker's like, "Geez, that's brutal." And Slaughter is like, "Yeah, that's why they call me Slaughter." Still got his mask too. Makes a great rag. Saying that he was decommissioned and forced to retire just as the world started getting hot again. All this news about Cobra returning just makes me sick. And we hear someone at the door. He's like, "Sarge, are you sick again? Because some ninjas and their pet wolf are here to see you." And he walks in and it's Peyton Manning. And Stalker's freaking out that he's Peyton Manning. He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm just codenamed Bazooka here. I'm glad that someone's a fan." Flint jokes, "Yeah, sorry, I'm more of a Bengals fan," referencing Tiger Force. Sarge explains that Bazooka is his caretaker. The government sends him to make sure he's still alive every couple of weeks. And now that the whole team's here, he shows them the gun collection. And Stalker questions how there's so many guns in so many weird areas. "Because this is America," Sarge replies. And Sarge calls up a bunch of other retired Joes, and now we have a huge team. We come up with a plan. We hear out in the news that the president's having a big nuclear powers meeting at the Statue of Liberty. rather than at Fort Sumter, and they decide that they're going to put together a big team. Team Ninja is going to sneak under the island into the sewers and stuff, along with codename Wetsuit and codename Tunnel Rat. The rest of the team are going to wait until get a signal from the first team, and then they will take the island. There will be another team who will be doing a secret mission in the meanwhile. And Sarge grabs his keys and he's like, hold on, we're going to need something that I've been using to plow snow for the last couple of years. And at the Liberty Island Information Center, they have the nuclear scene. It basically goes exactly the same with the US shooting their nukes and everyone else shooting their nukes. But then psych, they all just blow them up in the orbit. Everyone calls them insane. And Zartan's like, you haven't seen anything yet. A bunch of Cobra soldiers walk in and kill everyone who is not just the world leaders. He introduces them to the Zeus satellite array. He wanted to name it Yig, but it didn't sound too good out loud. Some weapons are fired, but this weapon, we just drop it. Cobra enters with everyone, and he explains that the Zeus just drops some spikes, and used to the power of gravity, it does this. And it shows London exploded, it did. And everyone's like, oh no, you madmen. And Zartan's like, ha, psych, it was just CGI. It didn't really happen. But if you don't give Cobra control of the world, we're going to do it for real. And we see Major Blood's there, and now he has a bionic arm. And Cobra decides to take full control of the US openly. And a bunch of his tanks drive on to the island. Everyone who's in the government who's not part of Cobra is arrested. Vice President Baroness sits at the Oval Office as the US flags are lowered and Cobra flags are placed. The head on the Lincoln Memorial is cut off and replaced with Cobra Commander head. Cobra says that he will own the rest of the world. And if not, he will drop the spikes onto their country. North Korea surrenders first. Storm Shadow tries stabbing Cobra Commander in the back. But Major Blood sees this and stops it with his mechanical arm. Snake Eye sees this and just shoots into the air, hitting a thing on his shoulder that's the signal, so Duke drives the snowplow onto the island, yelling, Yo, Joe! He starts shooting at the Hiss tanks. The rest of the team land on Liberty Island, and it sort of becomes a tribute to the animated movie, and capture the area around the statue. The commander tells Firefly to keep the briefcase that has the launching thing for Zeus, and sends Major Blood and Scrap Iron out to deal with them. Firefly, Zartan, and a couple ninja Cobras try escaping. Outside, it's super crazy and action-packed and wild. Everyone gets a little time to shine. Inside, the ninjas are fighting together. Storm Shadow goes after Zemo. Duke's having the time of his life in the tank. Until one of Firefly's fireflies land on the tank and they explode. There's a couple of Joe casualties, mostly from the veteran squad, due to Major Blood and Scrap Iron, but then they get dealt with by Lady J and Flint shooting him down. Duke hops out of the wreckage of the tank and he tries getting Firefly for what he did. They have a chase in those hovercraft things. Meanwhile, Storm Shadow has the same scene with Zartan as in the original, but then when he's stabbed, we see his face change from the President to Duke to finally landing on his normal face, and they don't just wash off. Commander tries escaping, but gets shot at. Starts screaming that he put him in the ground once, he'll do it again. Back at the chase, Duke manages to catch up to Firefly and they tussle. And last second, he stops the firing of Zeus. They don't fire and they don't just randomly explode because of it. Firefly tries using his Fireflies, but oh no, Duke took their detonators and blows them up. While this madness going on, Mindbender and Cobra Commander try escaping out the crown of the Liberty. Snake Eyes chases after him, shooting at them. Commander shoves Mindbender towards them. There's a little bit of a tussle. Storm Shadow appears and he tries helping him out, but Cobra Commander's gauntlets are swordproof, and Sarge shoots at him in the face and he falls out. And his mask is all cracked and we can see his eye. And it looks kind of familiar, which throws Sarge off. Mindbender explains that back in the 90s when they were first testing nanomachines, this helped prolong the life of the original commander. But after a year doing Sarge, we needed a new leader. And what better than the one that defeated the last? Cobra Commander takes off his helmet, and it's a younger Sergeant Slaughter, created from pure nanomachines in the blood of the Sergeant. Commander knocks Dr. Mindbender down the stairs to distract Joe as he tries escaping, which leads to Sergeant and Commander fighting against the face, the Statue of Liberty, as the helicopter for Cobra arrives. His commander was getting the upper hand during the fight and even stabbed Sarge in the leg. But Flint shoots the helicopter down and the shrapnel hits Commander, which gives Sarge the opportunity to push him down to his death. Back at the White House, Baroness is watching Hector. He's reporting on what just went down. Just as Team Everyone else arrives in the jumbo jet and they parachute onto the White House, Scarlet uses her arrows to take out the snipers. Destro, Baroness, and everyone else who is part of Cobra try to escape, but then the Joes find them, and we cut outside, and the Cobra flags fall as the US flags are risen. Back at Lady Liberty, the arm comically falls off due to all the action. Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow look each other over, and Snake Eyes just lets him escape. Now all the Cobra guys are either dead or placed into laser cells, while the Zeus satellites are self-destructed. The new president of the US, John Keller from Transformers 2007, gives an address to the country saying that the US was taken over by Cobra, but in its darkest hours, G.I. Joe were the real American heroes. Even if many tried to smear their good name, G.I. Joe will continue to eliminate Cobra influence within the government. And there's a big ceremony for everyone who has fallen, everyone gets medals. Flint becomes the new general of G.I. Joe, as made official by director Mirroring from Nest, who says they're going to be working together more often. Flint says that's cool, but the only real woman in my life is Lady J. And they kiss. Sergeant Slaughter salutes everyone and says that he's going back into retirement. And it fades to black and there's a bunch of action sounds what's going on? It's just Duke and Roblox playing Call of Duty. And there's a big wrap-up party for Thanksgiving at Roblox's house where he made gumbo. And that's how I would rewrite Gi Joe Retaliation. But what do you guys think? Like how I did it? Do you not? You had any better ideas? Let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already.